Deshitarane. Om Jnana Timarandasya Chinandana Shilakaya Chakshurina Tasmai Shri Rame Namaha Shri Chaitanya Vishtam Stavitam Yena Bhutale Swayamupagadamayam Tadati Swapatantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sja Shri Rupam Sabjatam Sahabana Bhagavatam Vitandam Siddhivam Sadvedam Savrutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Patan Sahabana Lalita Shri Vishakavitam Sja Hey Krishna Purna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Jayadam Surito Pangor Mahamadamatergati Matsarva Swapadam Bojo Radha Madanamo Hano Divya Bindaranya Kalpajumada Srimad Ratnagara Singha Sanasto Srimad Radha Shulagovinda Devo Kristalavi Savyamano Smarami Shriman Rasa Rasarambi Bamsi Bhattatatastita Karshan Venusvanar Gopir Gopinata Shriyes Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Bindavaneshvari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare. This is an excerpt from the Rasa Dance Introduction, chapter 29 of the Krishna book. Preachers are very, very dear to Lord Krishna. Their salvation is assured. In the Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, the Lord also states that one who is engaged in preaching Krishna consciousness is very dear to him. A preacher has to face many difficulties in his struggle to preach pure Krishna consciousness. Sometimes he has to suffer bodily injuries, and sometimes he has to meet death also. All this is taken as a great austerity on behalf of Krishna. Krishna therefore has said that such a preacher is very, very dear to him. If Krishna's enemies can expect salvation simply by concentrating their minds on him, then what to speak of persons who are so dear to Krishna? The conclusion should be that the salvation of those who are engaged in preaching Krishna consciousness in the world is guaranteed in all circumstances. But such preachers never care for salvation because factually one who is engaged in Krishna consciousness, devotional service, has already attained salvation. We see in the exalted character of Maharaj Ambarish that he, when confronted with the fiery demon created by Durvasa Muni, who he had just previously enunciated had been created to chastise or punish him, in other words, was a demon meant for his death, he was so much absorbed in Krishna with all his senses, Savaimana Krishna Padara Vindayo, everything, that he wasn't even the slightest bit afraid, and he didn't even ask Krishna, for protection or for help. He didn't even budge an inch from his position. And Krishna from his side automatically sent his Sudarshan Chakra. So this is very nice. So taking all risk, even to the point of bodily injury or even death, what to speak of things which are not so dire, like being neglected, ostracized, or ridiculed. The devotees of the Lord are so forbearing that even those things are inflicted upon them, they are not inclined to avenge themselves. Devotees are so exalted that they always see everyone as Krishna's part and parcel, everyone as Krishna's eternal servant, and they never find faults. they'll always see the good. Even Prahlad Maharaj, he saw the good in his father, who tried to treat him kindly as a son, according to his realization of things, and asked Lord Nrsingadev for the salvation of his father as the only benediction which was urged upon him to ask for. Such preachers never care for salvation because factually, one who is engaged in Krishna consciousness, devotional service, has already achieved liberation. Hansadutta Prabhu, who accompanied Śrīla Prabhupada to the 1971 Ardh Kumbh Mela in Allahabad, had heard that if one bathes in the Triveni, the confluence of the Ganges, Yamuna, and Saraswati, at particular precise times, mostly while it's still dark in the early morning in the wintertime when it's freezing cold, both the air and water, that one will achieve liberation. And Hansadutta, in particular, was one of the only devotees who went and did that. His own memoir was, I just want to make sure. Anyways, Prabhupada's answer to his question, yes, but we've not come here for liberation. We've come here to preach Krishna consciousness because we're already liberated. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're in the midst of the famous verse Vasudeva Paraveda. Does someone can tell me what part of the purport should be started from? Same applies to all kinds of austerities.
They read the first two paragraphs. This is all cultural.
Okay. Since we chanted it all yesterday, now I'll just read it myself again. Vasudeva Paraveda, Vasudeva Paramaka, Vasudeva Parayoga, Vasudeva Parakriya, Vasudeva Param Jnanam, Vasudeva Param Tapa, Vasudeva Parodharmo, Vasudeva Paragati. In the revealed scriptures, the ultimate object of knowledge is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The purpose of performing sacrifice is to please him. Yoga is for realizing him. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by him only. He is supreme knowledge, and all severe austerities are performed to know him. Religion, dharma, is rendering loving service unto him. He is the supreme goal of life. This is also so for the culture of knowledge. According to Bhagavad Gita, there are 18 items in culturing knowledge. Who would like to look that up? The 18 aspects of knowledge in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. By such culture of knowledge, one gradually becomes, a few are listed here, prideless, devoid of variety, vanity, devoid of variety. Could I see that deluxe Bhagavad Gita over there? You can even open it up to the appropriate place.
Is it chapter 13? 13:8.
13:8. So why does it say 18 here?
13:12. That's the normal one.
Oh, according to Bhagavad Gita, there are 18. Okay, see. All right, and I'll trade you a Bhagavad Gita for preaching is the essence. Let's put it here. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. So this is a substantial purport from Śrīla Prabhupada. We could call it a catalog that he writes, a pretty good descriptive realization or realized description of each of these qualities. Devoted to the great spiritual master and self-controlled. By culture of knowledge, one becomes unattached to hearth and home, becomes conscious of the miseries due to death, birth, old age, and disease. So this is a very important point. We should understand that the first step in spiritual realization is to factually realize that one is not one's body. And Prabhupada has revealed actually in his classes that this is a confidential secret. His devotional service is the most confidential of all realization and of all knowledge. Prabhupada simply said, only devotees can realize that they're not their body. And ultimately, only the topmost pure devotee can fully realize that, because residue of our bodily conception of life linger all the way up to the stage of bhava, where one is awakened one's original love for God, but it hasn't developed further all the way up to the highest pitch of prema. And that is exemplified in the life of Maharaj Bharata, who such a great king, such a great rishi, Raj Rishi, that this planet previously was named after him, Bharatvarsha, that he renounced all of this because he was attracted, actually when it was all said and done, at the conclusion of describing his 3 lives as Maharaj Bharat, as a deer, and as the Avaduta Jadbharat, that this is just he gave up everything, his all aspects of his royal reign, his beautiful young wife, his ministers, his treasury, his influence over. He gave all this up, just like one gives up stool after excreting it, because he was attracted by the beauty and magnanimity of the Supreme Lord Krishna. But even on that platform, he became diverted. And Prabhupada said this is because of having still completely not uprooted material desires. So, on the gross bodily platform of life, under very strong illusion, one loses one's sense that he is being inflicted with the 4 main miseries. These are the 4 problems of life: janma, mrityu, jaya, vyadi. And Prabhupada would speak to like cocky, like hippies and, mental speculating young people that you can hear on one tape, one recording in the early days. Do you mind to become an old man? You will be forced. You will be forced. Do you like disease? Well, I've never been diseased. I think I might have had measles or chicken pox when I was a kid. As if like just completely bewildered by their so-called youth. That death, birth, old age, and disease, these things afflict the material body. They don't afflict the eternal spirit soul. Or we could say these things afflict Non-devotees, they don't afflict devotees, because devotees are eternal, because they've taken shelter of Krishna. And one who engages in the Lord Nityananda is eternal. And one who engages in the service of Lord Nityananda is also eternal. All culture of knowledge culminates in devotional service to the personality of Godhead Vasudeva. Therefore, Vasudeva is the ultimate aim in culturing all different branches of knowledge. Culture of knowledge leading one to the transcendental plane of meeting Krishna is real knowledge. Narottam Das Thakur says he will not culture knowledge if it has no relationship to developing his original love for Krishna or engaging in his love relationship with Krishna. And we see how the atheists have taken over the educational system, and there is no knowledge in any university on this planet unless devotees have infiltrated in on some level or another, because they're just teaching people, knowledge based on you or your body, and the ultimate goal of life is to enjoy the body or to be lost in one's egocentrically grounded mind, ultimately thinking that, some type of Mayavadi philosophy, which has no basis of truth. Culture of knowledge leading one to the plane of meeting Vasudeva is real knowledge. Quite to the opposite, they're leading people away from Vasudeva to the point where, even under the leadership of these bogus professors, the students are turned into abject atheists. And practically, they're turned into demons. The ultimate aim of physical knowledge is what? To satisfy the senses, which means prolongation of the terms of material existence. More birth, more death, more old age, and more disease. Haribol. The term of material existence, and thereby continuance of the threefold miseries. So there's those four miseries: birth, death, disease, and old age. And what are the three material miseries? And, miseries inflicted by one's own body and mind. One of the symptoms of the age of Kali is that everyone will always be in great non-stop anxiety. The mind will always be disturbed. People will never have peace of mind. Miseries inflicted from other living entities. So your body and mind is always disturbed and unpeaceful. My body and mind is always disturbed and unpeaceful. So let's help each other to become even more disturbed and unpeaceful by fighting with each other. And in the 12th canto, they fight over trifles, over that which isn't even worth getting involved in whatsoever. They blow it up into a big thing. And miseries from natural disturbances. So because people are not living by the laws of the Lord, therefore the material energy, Bhumi Devi, the earth planet, is not very much inclined to give people what they actually really need in proper proportion and regulation. So there's famine, drought, pestilence, irregular weather, pollution, etc., etc., etc. And then when things reach a fever pitch, then there's some big giant war where millions of people are slaughtered wholesale. And there's proliferation of nuclear weapons, which at any minute can be dropped and create complete devastation. Thereby continuance of the threefold miseries. So prolonging the miserable life of material existence, it's not a good thing, right? Is nescience. But the same physical knowledge leading to the way of spiritual understanding helps one to end the miserable life of physical existence. This is why Śrīla Prabhupada created an institute just for spiritual Krishna conscious science, practically in his last days, called Bhaktivedanta Institute. And there was a big meeting in India, and his leading devotees came to Prabhupada practically in his last month. You can see there's a photograph there in wearing nice shirt and pants and ties. There's Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj, there's Sadaputta, there's Bob Cohn is in the perfect way, is initiated as Brahmatirtha, and I think, yes. And you can listen to room conversations where he's speaking for hours on end, very enthusiastically with Bhakti Swarup Damodar, coaching him on what to say, how to defeat the material scientists by using their own jargon. Well, let's think of a nicer word. Their own phraseology to actually prove that, and that book, which was coming out at the time, Life Comes from Life. And simple arguments that I bring you all the chemicals, can you even produce a mosquito? You know, can you make an egg and have a chicken hatch out of it? So, physical knowledge leading to the way of spiritual understanding helps one to end the miserable life of ill existence and to begin the life of spiritual existence on the plane of Vasudeva. I think that because some of you probably have not delved into this important catalog purport to the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that we can go through using our valuable time. I think this will be useful in relationship to the paragraph of today in today's purport. This process of knowledge is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent men as being the interaction of the field of activity. Right? So they think, okay, ordinary people are moving about in their bodies and they're thinking, you know, what is favorable and unfavorable, and it's a green light with a crosswalk. That means it's favorable to walk across the street. And there's a red light and the oncoming traffic has big trucks and buses and fast-moving cars. It'd probably be not a good time to try to cross the street because you'll probably get run over. So I'm thinking that, the devotee is thinking that, and so many other calculations. So it's the same thing. But actually, so these things, humility, pridelessness, you know, you can see humility in animals, pridelessness in little children, nonviolence, it's a big thing, and preach nonviolence as the ultimate religion. Well, hear all these things: tolerance, simplicity, cleanliness. There's many very atheistic people who are much more clean than we are. Steadiness, very steady, and looking at that stock machine ticker and calculating when I should buy and sell. So many things. Some of them they can't do, of course. Approaching a bona fide spiritual master, they'll approach, as is described in the 5th canto, buzzards, herons, vultures, and cranes, which are compared to bogus yogis and false imposters, charlatan gurus, and religious leaders that the Vedic literature doesn't authorize or refer to, and they simply cheat people because people want to have a sham of religious life and they want to have their cake and eat it too. So they'll approach a bogus personality. Instead of approaching the Paramahamsa, they'll approach a buzzard, vulture, heron, crane, like that, who are dirty birds. So Prabhupada is describing here, less intelligent people misunderstand, but actually this is the real process of knowledge, doing these things. If one accepts this process, then the possibility of approaching the absolute truth exists. This is not the interaction of the 24 elements as described before. This is actually the means to get out of the entanglement of these elements. It's just like if you want to go to a foreign country, okay, just that you have a passport from your country doesn't mean that you will go. You have to apply for a visa. Otherwise, you will be refused entry. So, just that you have a passport or that you have some money or some knowledge or some good looks, like why did these people become maddened by a false conception of bodily life? They don't care for Lord Nityananda. Who is he? What can he do for me? They're misbehaved animals. So they have the human form of life, which is the passport, but they don't get it properly. They don't get the proper visa, which is engaging in these items, aiming at pure devotional service, at the absolute truth. So we have a human body, we have a human mind, we have all facility, we're eating, we're everything that we need, just like the non-devotee, they need the same things we do to just simply exist, but they don't go further. And worse, especially in this Kali Yuga, they misuse. The embodied soul is entrapped by the body, which is a casing made of the 24 elements, and the process of knowledge, as described here, is the means to get out of it. How to get the visa. Out of all the descriptions of the process of knowledge, the most important point is described in the first line of the 11th verse, Mai Chananya Yogena Bhaktir Avibicharani. The process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. And even more, the topmost devotees who are in the topmost realm of Goloka Vrindavan, they've gone even beyond knowledge. They don't even understand that Krishna is the supreme absolute truth and cause of all causes. They simply are absorbed in loving Krishna. You can see in the chapter where Krishna reveals the universal form to Mother Yashoda, what is it? Krishna's coward boyfriend came to Mother Yashoda and kind of ratted him out that Krishna has eaten earth. And Mother Yashoda said, what is this? I'm treating, there's beautiful sweetmeats in my house. Why are you eating earth? And Krishna says, Mother, my elder brother Balaram got into a quarrel with me today. And all these boys, they've all come together to try to make trouble for me and they're speaking all these lies. And if you like, you can look in my mouth and see that I've not eaten earth. And she wanted to see. And she opened it up and saw the entire cosmic manifestation. There's a nice memoir of Bhadaraj Prabhu, who was at that time making the 52 paintings for the Krishna book, and hearing all of the Leelas for the first time, 1969, like that Prabhupada was describing everything, and Prabhupada, and Bhadaraj, how am I going to, the entire cosmic manifestation and all the planets and all the demigods and all the wonders of the phenomenal world she saw within her mouth? and she's there in Vrindavan with the little cowherd boys and elder brother Balaram looking on. You know, how am I going to depict this? And Prabhupada gave a description, and he did. And if you look in the original Krishna book, you'll see a very nice painting of that. So at a certain point, of course, Krishna's Leela is instructive for aspiring candidates such as ourselves to also come to this level of knowledge of Krishna. We supersede the need for knowledge of Krishna. That Mother Yashoda became bewildered seeing all this and started to think so many reverential thoughts of grandeur that were taking her away from what Krishna enjoyed so much, her intense Vatsalya Bhav. So Krishna arranged very quickly for Yogamaya to overwhelm Mother Yashoda's thinking in that way, and she immediately wanted to treat Krishna again as her very young son, practically, how old was he at the time? Like 4 or 5 years old. And she forgot all of those reverential feelings. But at the same time, it's not that forgetfulness. They didn't forget the knowledge that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they're on the. It's all included within their intense loving relationship with Krishna. So therefore, we must go through the proper stages of realizing who Krishna is. Otherwise, we are in serious danger, practically very predictable risk of becoming prakrita sahajiyas, those who take things cheaply. And all of the greatest personalities who have achieved the topmost knowledge, they ultimately bow down in dandavats and worship at the lotus feet of the residents of Vrindavan, Krishna's topmost devotees. So we should follow in their footsteps and do similar. The most important process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. So if one does not approach or is not able to approach the transcendental service of the Lord, then the other 19 items are of no particular value. Just like, somebody could be vegetarian, somebody could be very clean, somebody could be, even attempt to be truthful, etc., etc. But if they're not a devotee of the Lord, these other items are of no particular value. And Prabhupada quotes the famous and important verse 5:18-12, Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati kinchana sarver gunastacha samasate sara. All the good qualities of knowledge develop in one who has attained the stage of devotional service. The principle of accepting a spiritual master, as mentioned in the 8th verse, is essential. Even for one who takes to devotional service, it is most important. Transcendental life begins when one accepts a bona fide spiritual master. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, clearly states here that this process of knowledge is the actual path. Anything speculated beyond this is nonsense. As for the knowledge outlined here, the items may be analyzed as follows. Humility means that one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. So the 11th canto, again, we keep in mind this is all being narrated by Shukadeva Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit while the clock is ticking on the final 7 days of his life. So practically by the 11th canto, it must be like the 6th going into the 7th day, and you hear of, we just heard the entire 10th canto, all of Krishna's amazing pastimes, most important, his dealings with his beloved devotees, especially in Vrindavan and in Dwarka. And it's interesting to note that the 10th canto, in 90 chapters, there's much preparation and introduction to ultimately describe the birth and appearance of Lord Krishna and his glorious life in Vrindavan and everything that he did in Dwarka. But the 10th canto, it concludes, what is chapter 90 called? The Super Excellent Qualities of Lord Krishna, which is a summary of the 10th canto. But there's no mention or even hint of his disappearance. So the 11th canto begins by describing the curse upon the Yadu dynasty, which the Acharyas described was the Lord's plan, and because of that was a curse which was infallible, which could not be overcome. And Uddhava, understanding the imminent departure of Lord Krishna, what this actually meant, just like Lord Chaitanya, when Swarup Damodar heard the equivocal sonnet brought back from Jagadananda Pandit, who had heard Advaita Acharya speak it in Bengal to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Puri, Orissa. Tell Lord Chaitanya, who is now acting like a madman, that rice is no longer needed or wanted in the marketplace. That tell him that Advaita Acharya is acting like a madman too. Something like that. Maybe I didn't say it exactly right. And Jagadananda Pandit thought, no, it's simple and interesting, kind of humorous thing, not a big deal. And Lord Chaitanya, when he heard that, said, that is his order. And nobody really understood what Lord Chaitanya meant by that, but Swarup Damodar, he understood, and he became very sad and morose, because it indicated the imminent departure of Lord Chaitanya. From that day on, Lord Chaitanya's feelings in separation from Krishna doubled in intensity. And it's described his especially nocturnal activities now became wild and insane performances that particularly Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Roy, along with the nearest their staff, Govinda and the newly brought in Kashishvar Pandit, who was big and strong to be like a bodyguard for Lord Chaitanya. They were put through so much anxiety trying to safeguard and protect Lord Chaitanya. And ultimately Lord Chaitanya disappeared from this earth by amalgamating himself in the Gopinath, Tota Gopinath deity, near the Chatak Parvat replica sand dunes of Govardhan Hill on the seacoast in Jagannath Puri. So the whole Uddhava Gita is spoken, Krishna's instructions, which are very, very elaborate. Bhagavad Gita is 18 chapters, and I believe there are 24 chapters in what Krishna spoke to Uddhava. And then there's just maybe one or two chapters where going back to the beginning of the 11th canto, where the curse is rendered on the Yadu dynasty, and the ultimate destruction of the Yadu dynasty and the disappearance of Lord Krishna and Balaram and others are described. Then the 12th canto begins, and Shukadeva Goswami gets right into it, describes the degraded kings that will appear after Maharaj Parikshit's disappearance, and how they will all become degraded to the level of barbarians, and the symptoms of the age of Kali Yuga. Then the Bhumi Gita, which is an incredible chapter where the earth, personified earth goddess, is putting in right perspective all the great kings and leaders and people attached to their material acquisitions in this world, how insignificant they are in the course of eternal time. Even the greatest of them all, time renders them simply just an insignificant list of names. And then the four different types of annihilation, partial to complete. And all this is being done to completely make sure that Maharaj Parikshit is completely detached from all material conceptions. Of course, remember, he's a very great king in the prime of his youth, with majestic sovereignty over the entire earth planet. And Maharaj Parikshit fully ready. And he says, find this very small chapter, maybe 12 or 14 verses, final instructions to Maharaj Parikshit. So I have drunk the nectar of the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thank you for this kindness you have done. I am completely ready. And it's actually understood that Maharaj Parikshit went into Mahasamadhi and actually had departed his body prior to the so-called snake bird Tarshaka biting him. So this is real humility, that one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others, because in the material world, such honor is meaningless. The material conception of life makes us eager to receive honor from others, but from the point of view of a man in perfect knowledge who knows that he is not this body, anything, honor or dishonor pertaining to his body, is useless. One should not be hankering after this material deception. People are very anxious to be famous for their religion, and consequently, I'm going to be famous as a sports figure, a rock star, or a wealthy person, or whatever. Now I'm trying to become a devotee, or I think I am a devotee, and I want to be famous. I want to be a big devotee. I want to rise up the ranks. I want to get position. Then I want to take, like the highest status in the society, all for the wrong reason. So this is a predictable and common tendency. People are very anxious to be famous for their religion, and consequently sometimes it is found that without understanding the principles of religion, one enters into some group which is not actually following religious principles and then wants to advertise himself as a religious mentor. As for actual advancement in spiritual science, one should have a test to see how far he is progressing. He can judge by these items. So there's not time to read this whole purport. We'll skip to the end. Beginning from practicing humility up to the point of realization of the supreme truth, the absolute personality of Godhead, this process is just like a staircase beginning from the ground floor and going up to the top floor. Now on this staircase there are so many people who have reached the first floor. I'm good. Thank you. I'm okay. Good. It's good enough. Right, Gopal? You ever get that? Huh?
I don't need this.
Right.
Stress? No, you're getting good, but you could be better.
The second floor or the third floor. But unless one reaches the top floor, which is the understanding of Krishna, he is at a lower stage of knowledge. If anyone wants to compete with God and at the same time make advancement in spiritual knowledge, he will be frustrated. It is clearly stated that without humility, understanding is not truly possible. To think oneself God is most puffed up. Although the living entity is always being kicked by the stringent laws of material nature, he still thinks I am God because of ignorance. The beginning of knowledge, therefore, is amanitva, humility. One should be humble and know that he is subordinate to the Supreme Lord. Due to rebellion against the Supreme Lord, one becomes subordinate to material nature. One must know and be convinced of this truth. So we just read one purport today, the culture of knowledge. The purport will begin anew next time, with the same applies to all kinds of austerities. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments?
Something you're reading in the Bhagavad-gita purport reminded me that without devotional service and all the other qualities, it doesn't matter. If you're really clean, if you're really smart, if you're really this, or really that, if you're not doing devotional service, then it's useless.
Right.
It reminds me of a few verses in the Bhagavatam. I just read one. Prahlad Maharaj's prayers to Nrsimha in the 5th canto.
Mm-hmm.
You can have all the qualities of the demigods, but without devotion, then it's like he compared it to like a useless young couple, like glorifying each other even though they don't have any good qualities.
That's the conclusion of Lord Prahlad Maharaj's, which begins with let all envious persons be pacified and let them become peaceful and become everyone's well-wisher and practicing bhakti yoga. This attraction between man and woman is the maximum security lockup in the Durga's fort. Was it? You know, the sweet talks of the wife and the broken language of the small children make one a secure prisoner. How can one leave one's home? Okay, thank you very much. Grantaraj, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai. Core Premanandi.
His Grace Rama Raya Prabhu ki
Jai.
His Grace Bhagavat